Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Skinwalker thread, post stories, encounters, mythology, lore, etc. I will launch this thread with a story of my own. It's a long one, so fair warning. I was going to do Greentext, but decided I didn't want to crash half of 4chan's servers. After I'm done with my story, I will respond to questions, add details where asked, and plan to participate in this thread until it dies, I get bored or go to bed. This happened a little over 10 years ago, but I've never told anyone because it was just so weird. I started lurking 4chan a few months ago, mostly /r9k/and/bant/, but started on /x/and/k/ a few weeks ago, both boards where I discovered that talk belief, if often half ironic, of skinwalkers and the sort is fairly commonplace. So what better place to share my story with the world, right? So this all begins in a tiny town in Oregon close enough to the coast that on a windy enough day, you could smell the ocean. Up north was the Columbia River, then Washington. But in between us and that is the Clatsop State Forest, which is pretty big. There's me, Anon, a kid who I considered my best friend who we'll call Jake, and Sam. Me and Jake were pretty average losers, but we need to talk about Sam. Sam was everything you'd look for in a friend. He was basically a genius who could answer pretty much any question you had about science. He wanted to go to school to become an engineer, if I recall correctly. He was also the type of guy you would go to for advice about relationships and day-to-day problems, and he always seemed to give good advice. But on top of all that, he was an asshole about any of it. If you asked him anything about astronomy or whatever, he would always answer in a way that didn't make you feel like an autist. And even if it did, and you told him as much, he would look you right in the eye and say very seriously that you were much smarter than you thought you were. At this point, Sam was 21, maybe 22. Jake was 16, 17, and I was 17 or 18. Sam always had a sort of libertarian view, so when Jake and I wanted beer or smokes, Sam would buy them for us, but never enough for us to go crazy. For example, if we wanted to go camping, which was all the time, and wanted booze or smokes, which was all the time, Sam would only buy 1 pack of smokes for all 3 of us, or a couple 6-packs and give Jake and I 2 or 3, and keep the rest for himself, though he was never a heavy smoker or drinker. He told me that he didn't like to lose too much control of himself, like what would happen if you got super drunk. Anyways, one day I'm working at my job at the local scrapyard after school when someone brings in a rusty old dirt bike for us to take apart. As I'm helping scrap it, the guy tells me you don't need a license for dirt bikes if you're just driving off-road in the mountains, which sounds pretty sweet to me, especially since I don't have a car, and neither does Jake. Later I get home and call Jake. This was a time before cell phones were anywhere near as common as they are now, though they did exist, mostly as flip phones. And we both decided we want dirt bikes to ride around Innawoods with. I keep an eye out on the classifieds for a while, until I find one that's in okay condition, and am able to talk the guy selling it down enough to where I can actually buy it. Jake had just a few days before convinced his dad to sell him something that hadn't seen the light of day for years, if not decades. As was common practice, we phoned up Sam and told him we were going to spend the night in Innawoods, as well as all about our new dirt bikes. He says it sounds fun and that he could borrow his dad's ATV, so maybe we could drive around looking for stuff we haven't seen yet. So we pick a trail and follow it for a while, until it gets almost too dark to see, maybe a half hour later. This is deep down the trail. There aren't any proper camping spots, but making one of our own is easy enough, so we do just that. It's a pretty nice summer night. Late June, early July, I think. So we leave our tents, tarps we would just drape over any given tree branch and weigh down with rocks, in their bags and decide to sleep under the stars. But it's deep in the forest, we're 3 kids, and we have beer, even if it's not enough to get shit-faced, so we know automatically that sleep will come much, much later. Sam is sitting on a log roasting as many Vienna sausages as he can fit on a stick, and Jake and I are bitching about school. Fairly standard affair. Soon enough it's pretty dark out, and Sam starts talking about the constellations, the significance they may have once had to Native Americans, and a bit about astral navigations. Also fairly standard affair. After a while, we lapse into a rare silence and just appreciate the night sky. Like, this shit is fucking gorgeous. Without really meaning to, we've gone far enough away from town that there's next to no light pollution. Then Sam speaks up. You know, I've never been in this part of the forest. Let's go explore some. See if maybe we can find some old Native American ruins or something. Yeah, why not? This is pretty much the character dynamic between the three of us. Jake and I drag Sam along to some dumb shit, but later, when our two toddler attention spans are at a loss of what to do next, he takes control and steers the night from then on. We grab our flashlights and start going through the trees until we see a gigantic boulder sticking out of the moss and ferns, which I promptly climb upon, with Jake laughing. From atop my rock, I see Sam looking at some of the moss on a nearby tree. He starts talking about the difference between moss and lichen, and about how lichen can be thousands of years old. When out from the dark, a smell comes. It comes so subtly that I think it's just me at first, but then I see Jake make a face, and Sam trails off. It's really hard to describe just what it was, but if I had to use one word, it would be horrifying. Think rancid beef, curdled milk, roadkill, stagnant water, sour milk, and an oddly sharp metallic smell, and you might get the idea. It's so weird that I don't know what to say, and by now it's gotten pretty bad. Suddenly, Sam speaks up. Let's go back to camp, but it's not in his usual sort of playful tone. It's dead serious. Neither Jake nor I have ever heard him talk like that, and it honestly freaks us both out. On the way back, Sam, leading the way, starts talking about the human brain and how its job isn't really to give us the best possible representation of reality, but more just to give us a version that makes some sort of sense. Knowing what I've told you about Sam, this might not sound too odd, and usually it wouldn't be, but he's still using that serious tone, even though I can tell he's trying to sound less serious. And unlike the lichen in the stars, this is coming out of absolutely nowhere. Like when he's talking about nerdy shit, it's always connected to something. He's also talking pretty quietly, quiet enough that I have to strain to make out what he's saying. When we encounter things that the brain doesn't know how to process, it'll try its best to fill in the blanks with something coherent. That's why, when you're in a really dark room and you focus on the darkness for a while, you start to see shapes that aren't really there, or why you see faces in piles of laundry, that kind of stuff. Jake asks him why he's bringing this all up. Sam stops way too abruptly as turns. That smell? That wasn't something solid or physical. It wasn't just a dead animal or someone's poorly buried turds. We were picking up on something bad. Our minds were just trying to give us something to make sense of. And for whatever reason, it used our olfactory senses, our noses, to give us that information. I was stooped. That didn't sound like something real, but like I said, Sam was smart, and the way he put it made sense. Thankfully, the old campfire is coming into view, by now just some coals. In that moment, I wanted nothing more than for Sam, who was approaching what was left of the fire, to pour some lighter fluid on it or something. I look to my left and see Jake looking at the forest behind us and sweeping his light left and right. I look back to Sam in time to see him pull some revolver out of his belt that I didn't know he had. For my commandos, it looked like a cult detective or something, with kind of a shorter barrel. Sam starts fiddling with the cylinder, and I think he's just checking to see if it's loaded at first. But watch as he pulls the rounds out, one by one, and lays and dips the tip in the ashes. I want to ask him what the fuck he's doing, but by now I don't want to disturb him. It's hard to explain why I was so freaked out, but Sam was always a relaxed and confident guy, even if a bit awkward, and he was never scared of anything. Anything that would have worried most of us, Sam could explain, pick apart, analyze, so that it made sense, and we definitely wasn't worried about someone finding out he was buying beers and smokes for us. But here he was, the most serious I'd ever seen him. In tone, in movement, in everything, dipping bullets into ashes. It made no sense, and with every passing moment, everything felt less and less concrete and more surreal. Jake nudged me out of nowhere and I jumped. He apologizes and says, "You smell that shit? Holy shit, .png. The smell is back. I want to throw up, but don't bow over and make myself vulnerable." I turn to look at Sam and see his face in what's left of the campfire. It's almost scarier than the smell. After he's done, Sam slowly, methodologically, places the rounds back into their cylinder, one by one. Then, he pulls a hip flask out of his back pocket and dumps what must have been some pretty serious vodka or something onto the fire. With a huge whoosh, it explodes back to life. That's when I see it. My mouth goes dry by stomach drops. I lose seemingly all my strength as I see, not 20 feet into the woods to Sam's left, this figure. It's the general shape of a person, but something just wasn't right. It was taller than it should have been, with a longer face, hands, fingers, etc. than it should have had. Its eye sockets were huge, deep, and dark, and its actual eyes were just as big, wet, with tiny pinpoint pupils of a color I can't even describe. What was most fucked up about it, though, was that even in the light of a newly revived campfire, it still seemed shrouded in darkness. It's wearing clothes, but they are worn, tattered, and dirty. I didn't see much else because in that moment, I saw the barrel of Sam's revolver fade into my peripheral vision, and in an instant the world became bright light and high-pitched ringing. After Sam takes his first shot, I'm pretty disoriented, and don't see if he hit it, but I'm guessing that he did, because I hear this shriek, like sick, mutated animal that's being put through a wood chipper, then the telltale sounds of something rushing through the ferns. Just as I'm regaining my senses, my ears are ringing again by another shot, then another. A bit later, the ringing in my ears fades away, and I can see. Jake is sitting down in a fetal position, crying softly, rocking back and forth, and Sam has the most intense look I've ever seen on anyone, until then or since, like a father trying to protect his kids. I feel a warmth in my pants and look down to see that I've pissed my pants. No one says anything. We just sit in the dark, surrounded on all sides by this hostile shadow. I want nothing more than to get the fuck out of there, but also don't want to move. We don't sleep that night, and when the day breaks, we all wordlessly pack up. Even in the light of the sun, I don't want to start my bike, because I feel like it would be too loud. No one said anything on the way back, we just went. After that, we stopped hanging out. Not because we didn't like each other anymore or anything like that, but whenever we saw each other, we just remembered that night. Jake was no longer that cool kid that was fun to be around and that made dumb jokes. Whenever I saw his face, I remember seeing it twisted, wet with snot and tears, and Sam wasn't that laid-back, smart guy he used to be. Whenever I saw him, I just remembered that look he was giving that thing, this intensity that made him seem so much more dangerous. And of course, I'm sure I wasn't who I used to be anymore either, and was now the idiot who stood around and did nothing and pissed his pants. Naturally, this event had me curious, and a few internet searches later, I came across a website dedicated to cryptids that doesn't exist anymore, where I learned that what we hadn't encountered was almost definitely a skinwalker of some kind. I still talk with Sam on the phone, sometimes. It's easier that way, and every time I do, I want to ask him about that night but never have the courage to. I think we're okay now, but I just can't camp anymore. Day hiking is fine, but I will never be caught dead in the forest at night again.
Alright, /X/ I have two Skinwalker stories I'd like to share. One is fairly short and the other one is a little longer. The first and shorter story takes place about 5 years ago, B14. Have lived in Innawoods for the past 6 or so years. Love dirt bikes and ride them around the area. My family owns some land, about 10 acres, but through extended family and friendly neighbors I have access to about 200 acres of woodland. One night around 9:30 p.m. I was riding on a TW200, pick-related, same bike and year. The area I have access to is fairly narrow and almost horseshoe-shaped. I'm about 1.5 miles from my home and at least half a mile from anything else. I'm going down a very old driveway that used to be a logging road. The road cuts through a calm and begins to slope downhill towards a large marsh. As I'm going downhill, the bike begins to sputter, and eventually, the engine stalls. I begin to smell what smells like a rotting deer carcass. Have heard wolves in the area, so think nothing of it. I open the tank and check the gas. Empty. JPG. The headlight is still on and is shining into the now pitch-black woods. As I move my head down to turn the fuel to reserve, I see movement in the path of the headlight. The smell is absolutely putrid by this point. I didn't get the best look at the creature, but I'll try and describe it as best as I can. Appeared to be about the size of a large deer, but hairless with bluish-gray skin. The head appears pretty fucked up and completely unnatural. My stomach drops. All I am carrying is a small hunting knife. Nope.svg. Get the bike running and nope out of there at over 40 miles per hour. Make it home in record time. Parents ask me what happened and say I look pale. Decide not to tell them, thinking they won't believe me. Instead, tell them I had a close encounter with a mountain lion. Go to sleep trying to figure out what the hell I saw. Never return to that area without my nugget. I only ever told one of my friends about what I really saw that night. When I told them, they said they had had similar encounters. I tried to get my friend to tell me what he had seen, but he never told me much. I'll post the second story tomorrow. I need some sleep.
How did you get the bike to run on an empty tank?
There's a 3-position fuel switch on every bike that I know of. Pick-related res is a small reserve of fuel.
That's some creepy shit. If you find it again, hit that fucker with steel core. I can share my encounter in the Pacific Northwest too if you'd like. Alrighty, I'll green text this the best I can. I don't live here anymore, so I'm not going to withhold too much. 14 in high school in a smallish town called Sedro-Woolley, 50 miles north of Seattle. My best friend was moving to Montana in a month. We'll call him D. His family went bankrupt earlier that year and hated Washington anyways. He was and still is my brother, not by blood. Guy is a pretty bravado macho man too. Both farm kids, him more so due to his cattle farm and better upbringing. We decided to hang out as much as we could before he left. Hey C, let's go to the barns this Halloween. The barns was an affectionate name given to the cattle barns of Northern State Mental Institution. The inmates and staff ran them before the reform. Lobotomies, tunnel complexes, mass graves, self-ends, the whole 9 yards went down in that place. Mom drops us off at the Rite Aid in town next to the middle school. She had no idea we were going to the park in Northern State. It was a hell of a walk. 3 miles is a lot for kids. Finally got to the field with our flashlights and flip phones. We thought we were pretty cool. People are starting to head back to the parking lot as the sun began to set. It usually got dark pretty early in the winter. The complex sat on a plateau, elevated from the river so the bog didn't eat the buildings. Skagit County is known for flooding. We jaunt up the small incline from the field from the south side. Shadows were cast all around us, and the interiors were so dark they seemed like portals. Come on, dude. One of them is super creepy. Use pick-related for reference. The circled one in the top right is the one he was talking about. We walked by the husks, giving the cow barns a wide berth. We reach a smaller structure, still large even by my own barn standards. This is the one that freaked my dad out. His dad was a man of character. He'd walk into a bar and you'd be lying if you didn't notice his presence. Wasn't scared of much either. I tried to not look towards the windows of the barns too much. I was a bit of a chicken shit. Even though I was afraid of my own shadow, it felt less okay than usual. My anxiety is starting to get to me. D, being the brother that he was, did his best. Hey C, it's all right. Nothing can get you, remember? We were both raised Christian, as in die-hard Christian. This was a bit of a taboo to us in the first place, but D was always looking for trouble. I can never get across to people the feeling of being helpless even in prayer. D is shining his flashlight into the barn's open doorway. The quiet is maddening. Not even the whirring of a passing car on the distant SR-20 can be heard. The barn is completely open from front to back. D looks at me and says, "See, nothing." My eyes start to dart all across the stalls and wooden slider doors. The dim blue hue to the field behind the barn is not helping in reminding how dark it is about to be. I refocus on him, but in the same breath I notice something change in the field behind the barn. Almost like the shadow of a cloud, a silhouette fades in among the tall grass, as if a passing wind brought it with it. It was there for a good 3 seconds, with me staring long enough to make D look as well. "Who was that?" D asked. "I don't want to be there anymore." I grab my phone out of my Carhartt coat and open it. Usually when you open a Motorola Razr, the screen instantly lights up. It was dead, as in dead. Pressing the red power button on the keypad did nothing. "Hello," D yelled through the barn. "Hey!" We both froze. D was shaking. He was vulgar, even to his parents sometimes, and it's not something I'll really forgive anytime soon. "Fuck you!" he screamed. The silhouette was rather tall, but far enough back into the field that you couldn't discern who or how big exactly it was. We ended up getting spooked and running back to the parking lot where a SWPD officer was taking a break. He hauled our dumb asses back to our parents, and things went on as usual for another 2 weeks. Every day, because my mother worked in Bellingham at 5 a.m., I would walk down to the bus stop to catch the bus at 6:30. PIC related. I lived at the end of that road next to the Arrow, surrounded by forest at the foot of a mountain. It was pitch black every morning. I did this for 6 years. Dee moved away and life went on. One day, before a huge windstorm, I entered the woods at that line next to the Arrow. The road hooked around that bend, and you're surrounded by cottonwoods and evergreens. Mom didn't really care that much. Gave me a small 1 AAA flashlight that was a piece of shit. Reached the bend. I hate the sound of my shoes on gravel, so I usually listen to music on my way down, but today for some reason my audio jack wasn't working. Crunch, 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 crunching intensifies. My blood was icing over. I had always feared a cougar or bobcat would trail me and pounce. I swivel around and open up my coat and begin to yell. My flight revealed nothing. Goosebumps are forming all over me as I spin back around to continue walking. I shone my flashlight on the evergreen which hung low over the road. I am around 50 or so feet away from the closest branch. 2 legs. 2 black legs were ramrod straight behind the branch. I thought I was just seeing blotches from being so tired. Stepped to either side of the road to shine the light from different angles. It was almost as if the black masses were 3-dimensional, but allowing no light to reveal a surface. I ran. I sprinted all the way back up the road to the house and called my mother to tell her I saw a bear. I didn't go to school for 3 more days after all that.
Alright/X/ here's the story of my second encounter. It took place 3 years ago, so 2 years after the first encounter. I'll make a map of where the 2 encounters took place, PIC related. B16. Have been returning to the area of the first encounter for the past 1.5 years. I didn't return at first for about 6 months. So far, no incident. This was about 4 p.m. in July or August, so it was light outside and still quite hot. At the end of the logging trail, it intersects another trail that runs perpendicular to the main trail. The trail borders a marsh, and if you take a right, you will end up near a small river, maybe 20 feet wide. The marsh feeds into the river, which then empties into a nearby lake. This forms a peninsula of which is bordered by the marsh, river, and lake. If you were to walk about 4 to 5 miles down the peninsula, you would come across a highway. What I liked to do was cross the river and hike around the peninsula for a while. Even though I hadn't had an incident in 2 years, I still carried a Mosin Nagant with me. I crossed the river and started to head southwest on the peninsula to a small camp I set up. It's only a 1.5 mile walk. The lake borders the peninsula for a long time, but the marsh cuts out after a while and turns to dense woodland. I get to my camp spot and start a small fire because why not? I decided to walk further than I had before and start walking. I was at least a 1/2 mile from camp when a very pungent odor hit me. That was when I realized it had the same smell. My stomach dropped. I continued on, however, thinking that if I did encounter it, it wouldn't survive a few rounds from a Nagant. The smell persisted and started to become nauseating. The forests were silent, which is very uncommon in the summer. I'm about 3/4 mile out from the camp when I begin to hear the moving of the underbrush around me. It sounds like it is coming from 3 locations, left, right, and behind. I stop and turn around fast, raising my Nagant to low ready. Nothing. Dead silence. Shout something along the lines of, "Show yourself or I'll fucking shoot you." Still nothing. Hear crunch to my back, right? Spin around, see nothing, and cycle 3 rounds through the bolt as fast as I can. Hear a screech and see a figure fleeing. Nope.png. Think creature is gone, but I'm freaked the fuck out, so begin making my way back to my camp. Smell is gone, so I start to relax. Get close to camp. Smell begins to surface again. Make it back to camp. Everything is strewn about and or torn to shreds. Smell is worse than anything I've ever smelled before. Get a gut-wrenching feeling like I'm being hunted. Pick up any shit that isn't trashed. Begin to sprint back to the river. The fear is making me run faster than a meth head. Hear screech behind and to the right. Think I'm about to become something for dinner. Don't even look behind me. Just try and run faster. Make it to the river and plow through the water, knee-deep at most. On the other side of the river, I look back and see what looks like 3 or 4 huge black shadows on a ridge. Screeches from across the river. Something tells me to shoot the creatures. Load 3 more rounds into Nagant. Fire 5 shots at the creatures on the hill. Hear 4 thwacks as the bullets find their mark. Big mistake. A chorus of screeching erupts from across the river. The creatures are charging down the hill. Bolt to the motorcycle. Hear water crashing as something big moves through it. Screeches the whole way. Fuck shit, make it to bike. Full tank this time, thank God. Kickstart, shift, gas, go. Look in the mirror and see the woods and movement far back. Make it home. Never return to the river. This was my second and hopefully last ever encounter with a skinwalker. I never told this story to anyone. My gut told me to shoot at the creatures, but now thinking about it, I should have just continued to bolt. Even thinking about this today gives me spooks. I've had some other weird events in that area, mainly smells, but this and the previous thread were the only 2 face-to-face encounters I've had with skinwalkers.
What happened in the woods this weekend? I haven't been on this board in a long time, even half for that matter. Something happened over the weekend, and it was just spooky enough to where I thought I would share it with you guys. This is my softcore Wendigo skinwalker story. Be me, 30, in a wildlife management area, scouting out a new fishing spot and enjoying the sights, songbirds, woodpeckers, turkey, and deer. Noticed 4 vultures circling overhead while looking at the tops of the pine trees. Think nothing of it. There are 2 species of vulture where I live, so not uncommon. The sun is going down, so time to find a place to make camp. About 15 minutes later, catch the smell of burning rubber and plastic. Very strong smell and kinda makes me gag. Keep hiking to get away from the smell. Instead, the smell gets stronger. That's when I noticed that everything went completely silent. No animals, no birds, and even the quarter-sized mosquitoes that had been buzzing around my ear were gone. Think back to all the late-night Greentext reading from /x//k/and/out/. Oh shit. Keep pressing on to get as far away from that area of the woods as possible. Find a spot that will work and set up for the night. While making dinner, hear rustling coming from the brush in front of me. Then hear it to my right, then my left. Check it out and find nothing. Fucking squirrels.jpg. Sit back down just to hear a large branch snap behind me. I've heard this sound before watching bears. Turn around with my heart leaping out of my throat and everything instinct telling me to run. Nothing was there. Tactically shat my pants for no reason. Sat there, smoking a cig, trying to rationalize what was happening. Dinner was ready, so I dig into some delicious chicken and dumplings, clean up camp and started to chain smoke. The last bits of daylight were leaving me at this point. Take one last piss before bed when I start to hear something off in the distance. I couldn't make it out at first, but it was melodic. It sounded like a woman, singing. Decided that was my key to head to bed. Fuck this mess, not a K-commando. Hop in the tent and get in my sleeping bag. Put on Red Dwarf to calm myself. It's cold outside. There's no kind of atmosphere. I'm all alone. More or less.
I'll share a story here too, boys. I haven't had any encounters personally, but I know at least 3 others who have. I'll try to Greentext how my buddy told it to me a few years ago, at a summer camp in 4th or 5th grade. Camp is packed for the summer and with a bunch of new Native American kids from the res, all going fun and well throughout the month, just cramped. Wind up moving into the newer cabin with a basement. The basement has one of those small windows at the top. Wake up in the middle of the night. No skeletons, but uneasy for some reason. Everyone else is still asleep. Obviously try to go back to sleep, but look around first. See something crouched and looking into the basement window. Looks sickly and with skin stretched taut against a strange skull. Human, but not natural. Immediately look away, spooked out. Somehow fall asleep. Bring up the figure by the window to a few of the kids throughout the rest of the week. One kid knows what I saw. Said that it's a monster his grandpa warned him about since he was a toddler. I told him about skinwalkers one night when we were still in high school. He read a few stories and saw some of the drawings people have come up with and swears that it had to be one. My buddy has lived in northern Minnesota his whole life, near Native American reservations, northwestern Wisconsin with his family, etc. He told this story at a couple campfires just to spook some people, and at least one girl got genuinely scared and started crying, saying she was chased by something when she was out four-wheeling with her brother. These things are definitely fucking real, man. Too many fucking instances. Only a matter of time before I wind up running into one.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.